Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is the general manager of the Jackson Wink MMA Academy, where he's built an amazing flow of fighters coming in and out from all over the world. He's a black belt in Gracie Barra Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has successfully competed most of his life. He's also a U.S. Navy veteran. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Michael Lyubimov. How are you doing today, sir?
How are you, sir? Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you were able to join us. So what we do with every one of my guests, I want to go back to the beginning and find out where was that first interest, that first spark that led to you getting involved in martial arts?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty much from the beginning of the start of UFC in a way, and I was born in Russia, and I kind of had a background in Sambo as a martial artist. I'm sure you know what Sambo is, right?
Oh, yes.
So,
Yep.
you know, it's a national sport in Russia, and it's a very successful martial arts that gets people, you know, competing in a variety of martial arts. It's got great base. It's got, you know, stand up, especially the combat sambo. It's got stand up. It's got takedowns similar to judo, and then it's got obviously groundwork, and so it's pretty well-rounded sport.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like, you know, since 1996 when I came first to America. Well, I actually came in 1995, and UFC was just, you know, kind of on the rise, and I remember watching the first like UFC tapes with Oleg Taktarov and Igor Zinoviev and those guys competing back in the day. Actually, I ended up moving to Brooklyn, New York, and I used to go to the club where Igor Zinoviev trained.
Oh, wow.
So I actually caught him at the time when he fought Frank Shamrock, when he just like broke his collarbone. So I trained. They had this little room, literally like, I don't know, like almost like a closet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of fun to watch like the pioneers of that sport, and a lot of like the training partners that were coming there, and all the guys. Like Igor probably was the biggest name, but then I think Oleg Taktarov came in there a couple of times. I mean, it was Brooklyn, you know, so a lot of Russian speaking people there, right? So
Okay.
and that was to me kind of the birth of my desire to get involved in that sport, you know.
Okay.
So obviously started me training and just started watching it, and I was like, oh wow. Just unfortunately I never got to compete in MMA like that because of I came here by myself when I was like 15 years of age.
Oh, wow.
So for me it was more like I had to settle down, figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So then I had kids, and so it wasn't easy, but I competed in Sambo previously, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, and then all that type of stuff. Except and the combat sambo is similar to MMA, you know, because you throw punches, you kick, you do everything, just without the cage, you know. It's more like amateur MMA in a way.
Okay. So did you compete when you were in Russia at all then?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get involved in that? How did you did you start Sambo first? Did you start Jiu-Jitsu first?
Yeah, Sambo, because as a young kid, like I grew up in Moscow. So there was this if you look it up, it's called Sambo 70.
Oh, yes.
It's the biggest schools in Sambo in Moscow, right? So it's a huge program where, you know, kids live, go to school, and grow into, you know, Sambo practitioners. So that's where I went first. It was an insane experience in a huge building with lots of mats, and just very interesting experience. And that's how it kind of started in there.
So what made you first want to get started in it? Was it something your parents wanted you to do? Was it your choice?
Well, it was kind of like, you know how how kids usually don't know what they want right when they're young. So I mean, I did a little gymnastic, play
Oh,
soccer, play a little hockey. So just you stick your nose into everything when a kid.
okay.
So, until you kind of find yourself in a way. And that Ep70 was like judo Kodokan, right? Like when people go to Japan to study judo, right? Like Kodokan is like the biggest, hugest school, right?
Oh, definitely.
For judo. So in Moscow, Ep70 is like Kodokan, but for sambo.
Okay. And so what age were you when you first started competing then?
I think I was I'm trying to remember, maybe like 11 or something, or 10,
Okay.
something
And did
like
you
that.
have success right away? Do you remember your first ever competition?
Actually, I do. It's funny because I started and I barely knew anything. And I remember there was a tournament coming up, and literally, like, I don't know, I must have trained maybe, I don't know, a week and a half,
Hmm.
and they needed to fill in the weight. They needed to fill in the weight, and I remember, like, so they just threw me in there and just like, hey, go there at the beginner level, whatnot, you'll be okay. And I don't remember what place I took, but I remember just winning match after match. It was just one simple technique. I would just like get inside the people, like how you do like the fireman's carry.
Hmm.
Because I remember just showing it probably like a week prior to it. I remember like getting in there and just without even knowing any proper techniques in the way, and just getting under people, like picking them up and throwing them on their back and like pinning them and stuff. And it was just
Wow.
like just mostly a natural reaction to it.
Hmm.
And so when I feel like, I'm not that bad, I remember I'm winning. I don't, I was 11, obviously I'm
Right.
42 now. So I don't remember how many matches I won, but I like vaguely remember that I did very well. Like I just like won one after another, and people like, the coaches, and they always tell me like, "Damn, man, like, where'd you learn that?" I'm like, "I don't know, just watching." So
Nice.
it's kind of you in a way, like I can be good at this.
So was that kind of addictive then and made you want to keep competing, I suppose, after doing that well your first time?
Yeah, it was started first well, but the problem with this is I was a really bad student, so it was kind of hard, in Russia in the 80s and 90s. It was like, and I kind of grew up in the street in a way.
Hmm.
So I was hard, and that school required a lot of like, it's like almost, when you go to university or college, you can wrestle for college, right? Like you have to have good grades, you have to study and stuff like that. So it's kind of like very similar. So it was kind of, for me, it was like on and off, on and off. It's
Okay.
mostly in America. When I got here, I got deeply, like, really involved, like, in jiu-jitsu. I completely fell in love with it, and it just changed my life in so many ways. It actually opened up the doors for me to run one of the best MMA academies in the world.
Oh, definitely. So then, okay, let's fast forward. Then you moved to the U.S. You started training in Brooklyn.
I trained in MMA a lot with a
Okay.
lot of fighters, but my biggest focus was at the time for like jiu-jitsu, mostly ground fighting, because I loved it so much, and I love the gi competition, like training in the gi for some reason, because I really like judo, and because sambo involves, a jacket, right? So there's a
Hmm.
lot of throws and a lot of trips and things like that. So I really like that, and it's I kind of didn't start competing till like later,
Okay.
close to my 30s,
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
because again, like, I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. There was a lot of work, trying to settle down in this country. Like I said, I was by myself. There was no help from anybody. I had
Hmm.
to work. It wasn't an easy path, but then when I started competing, I pretty much at the local and regional levels, I won everything. Like always, like the first place. So this kind of always haunts me in the way, like, well, if I had opportunity to do it from the early age and like stick to it, and I had all the right circumstances, I could see myself being actually a world champion, because I do really well. Like in my own age brackets, like I rarely ever got anyone like dominate me or anything. So at practices or anytime I traveled all over the world, and I trained with a lot of even younger kids and everything, like I always held my own, and some more. So it's kind of always haunts me, like, damn, man, I wish I didn't have a father figure in my, because my father lived in Ukraine. Actually, I'm from
Oh,
Russia. I
wow.
was born in Russia, but then I grew up in Ukraine, so I used to go back and forth. So to me, that's kind of like, oh, damn it. But like I said, I worked with who's of who in mixed martial arts, starting from Khabib Nurmagomedov and all the Russians coming in the beginning of the sport, and into, John Jones and Holly Holm and Diego Sanchez, and I
Wow.
mean, thousands of fighters come through me. So,
So my first
and
ever experience with, I knew nothing about Sambo, and I was at a martial arts tournament in California in 1995, ended up going to a seminar with Gokar. That was my first time ever
oh,
seeing Russians, which,
a legend,
yeah,
a legend.
yeah, definitely a legend. That was fun. I mean, even just the 2 hours I was with him, I learned so much. Just such an amazing.
Yeah,
Did you ever get to work with him at all?
not to work with him,
Okay.
but I met him at one of the Bellator fights when he was, I don't remember, he was one of his Armenian fighters he was cornering and stuff. And
Okay.
I took a picture with him, shook hands, we kind of exchanged some pleasantries. And, but big fan of him. He's a legend for sure.
Nice. So at what point did you start teaching others? What brought that on?
Well, it was, as I started progressing more in jiu-jitsu, so I mostly focused on getting better myself in a way. So I think at around brown belt, I started more like helping out, because I trained. When I got so hooked on jiu-jitsu, I was actually in the car business at the time. I was living in New Jersey, and like my life was kind of in a standstill, and I was dealing with a lot of things, and even though I was making really, really good money,
Mm-hmm.
selling like BMWs and like high-end cars and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then it was like I was given a test drive to one of the clients, and I kind of like, and I make a wrong turn, and I literally, like, this dead end street, and right around the corner from where I lived, where I worked, and then boom, and in front of me is like Hands of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm like, damn, this is a sign. So like literally, I this when I caught onto jiu-jitsu, and then I stepped in, got my ass handed to me by a black belt, and I was like, damn, I never want to feel like this ever again. And it was just the end of the story. And then I just got involved, and ended up quitting the sport, because I met one of the first regional managers that was bringing Khabib Nurmagomedov, who brought Khabib Nurmagomedov here in the United States, on top of all the other bunch of Russians that started coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I ended up being part of that management where we started building all the Russian fighters, and I started traveling with them all over the world, all over the country, to different camps. So that's when I kind of got into teaching and helping and learning everything about light game. That's how I ended up actually here in Albuquerque running the gym.
So then how did you end up meeting Greg Jackson? How did that come about?
All right, so it was Greg Jackson and Coach Mikkeljan. That's how I met them both. I actually met them both in a couple of the events with John Jones where we shared. There was Khabib fought on same card that was the John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight. I'm sure you know about it, right? It's a Hall of Fame fight. It was one of the greatest light heavyweight bouts in history of the sport. So Khabib fought on that same card, and where he beat Pat Healy, I believe it was his fifth or sixth fight. So I was there. This was prior to when they actually allowed to film backstage. So back then the cameras were allowed to be there. So I actually always proud of myself. You know how they do like the UFC embedded, right, where they film the backstage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe I kind of created it, because I was like one of the first ones to record the whole path of Khabib Nurmagomedov, like behind the scenes, how he was cutting weight, getting ready. Pretty much, I recorded, did like 7-part series for YouTube, and put it out there, and that thing just blew up. And every time I was going to UFC events, or Bellator events, I was like recording all that backstage stuff. And then all that stuff just started blowing up with thousands of views, and people writing to me, we want to see more, because it was like, so like no one ever seen anything really like behind the stage. Like Pride used to do it, remember?
Right.
Back in the day, Pride was like putting out all that backstage stuff. And then I started doing it, and then literally they're like, UFC like shut it down. And boom, they come out with UFC embedded and backstage stuff. I was like, huh, interesting, So, but that's during all those my trips. That's when I met Greg Jackson and stuff, and then after that, as I came to Albuquerque actually one time with Adlan Amagov and Rustam Habilov. They were training at Greg Jackson's camp. They were also like the pioneers in UFC for Russian-speaking fighters and stuff. So I came there once, explored that, lived with them in the house, helped them with diet, get them ready for fights, had a lot of fun, trained and whatnot. Then went home, and then came again with another fighter, Timur Valiev. He wasn't UFC then, but he's in UFC now.
Okay.
And so that's when I came to the old gym. They had like an old location where it was much smaller. They were like blowing up and stuff with so many fighters trying to come and train here, especially from overseas. And they only had like limited amount of dorm space. I know, like for 3-4 people, So and there was a smaller gym, right? But it was already so famous, Rashad Evans, George St. Pierre, John Jones, Holly Holm, all this, Diego Sanchez, right? Tim Kennedy, Brian Stan. I mean, you can go on and all these guys training there. So, and all these foreign athletes trying to get here, but they were having a hard time, finding a place to live and transportation and whatnot. So that's when the expansion began, and Jackson Wink was one of the first ones to start to build a huge facility with like dorm rooms and apartments and all kind of stuff inside the gym, So, and at that point, when that transition was happening, I came with Timur Valiev, and Coach Wink came up to me. Coach Wink is actually the owner of the gym, of the new one, so he invested and built the whole thing, So he came up to me and said, "Hey, if you send me some fighters, I'll pay you. Obviously, we have that pipeline or whatnot, because I need to, make sure we occupy the dorm rooms." And I'm sure, and in between the conversation, he said, "Yeah, we're like looking for a general manager." And I literally like, "Well, let's talk about it." And then I sent him my resume. I had like, because I was Russian and I speak Russian, I speak perfect English in a way. I have martial arts background. I know the sport very well, and I've been around business I have also extensive experience in computers. I build websites. I do graphics. I do video editing. I mean, like professional way. Like if you look at all the content that comes out and our websites, I mean, we're talking about like very high level production. So I do that all, And then and Coach me like, oh damn, And literally the next day, he's taken me to a new facility while I was in construction and started showing me around. And showing me all this huge 30,000 square feet building. I'm like, oh damn. And then we just sat in the car, spoke for like an hour, 2 hours, and he literally like hired me on the spot. And then I went back home to New Jersey, packed my car, and then my wife was still in university, finished her degree. So I'm like, hey, let me try it. I'm going to drive up there. So I drove like 30 hours, and that's how the story begins in a way. And then boom, 5-6 years later, I mean, the gym is packed with 60 fighters, nonstop fighters coming in from everywhere. So that's kind of my beginning here.
Wow. And how much longer before your wife moved down, before she finished?
It was about a year. Yeah.
Okay.
She had 1 year left. She was studying for an accountant, and then she got her CPA over here. So we literally, like, I lived on East Coast majority of my time in America. So, but I absolutely love it here. I had really like humidity wasn't for me, and and even though I came from Moscow, from a big city, like I lived in New York, New Jersey, tri-state area for a very long time, and I hated it there. Like, I need space. I need good weather, it's so nice over here. I had like very bad allergies in the East Coast, and I literally moved here and all my allergies were gone instantly.
Wow.
So cost of living here is much better. I bought a house here. My wife got a phenomenal job, and I have the gym. I get to train all the time. There's Gracie Barra right there, because we have a big connection with Gracie Barra. It's our family. So it's literally around the corner from me, like 5-minute drive, even less. And then just like nonstop. I mean, this is like the little mecca of MMA here, just everyone just trains. So it's like perfect environment for me.
Wow, sounds like just a dream job for you. I mean,
Oh yeah,
that's
true, man. Trust me. Yeah, I could never imagine. As I was growing up, watching those like VHS tapes and watching Pride events and those broken cable boxes. Remember
hmm
back in the day, where you get like 3 in the morning, you're watching Fedor Emelianenko fight or
Yep.
any of those guys, and I always show those backstage footage. And I was always to myself like, man, it would be so cool to be a part of like a cool team, or something. And honest to God, this is what I told myself. And I always said, like, I don't want no like millions of dollars. I don't want none of it. I just want to be happy,
Right.
And exactly what I said and dreamed of happened. And the thing is, I didn't even pursue it that way.
hmm
It just literally like dropped in my head out of nowhere.
Wow.
And that's why, like wow, the way that things work in a lot in mysterious ways.
That's great. So what,
Uh,
let's say you had some people that were deciding between different gyms. What makes Jackson Wink different than other MMA schools, other MMA gyms? What do you think makes them different, makes them stand out?
well, it's like Greg Jackson's camp is one of the most original camps in the history of the sport, right?
hmm
So originally, I mean, this camp is synonymous with MMA, like with the sport of MMA. Like with the rise of UFC, this camp rose, right? I mean, it's the camp. Greg Jackson started teaching in 1992. UFC kind of originated in 1993, right? So
hmm
with the rise of the sport, the coach, Coach Jackson is like a godfather to MMA coaching, right?
Right.
If you look around the world, a lot of successful MMA camps or whatnot, they're former Greg Jackson students, that got their start learning from Greg himself. So the thing is back in the day, to a certain point, there was only select few camps. Like probably the two oldest ones was Greg Jackson and AKA, right, Javier
Yep.
Mendez, let's say. And as you remember, like the Pet Militich system, like the
hmm
Lions and all those camps, right, they no longer exist, right? So it's kind of like it's a survival of the fittest in a way, right? Like, and things happen. Not that they're bad or bad coaches, but just it's progression, right? Things happen, right?
Right.
Things come and go like everywhere else, and right now it's competitively really hard to stay afloat in a way, because there's literally in every state there's a successful MMA school, literally.
True.
So it's competitively very hard to recruit and bring people here in a way, because why would people want to go anywhere, or give up their families at work, right? That's upcoming fighters. So for people to come to Albuquerque and find themselves, it's not that easy either, because it's Albuquerque, right? Like, what's not much here to do, and it's not Vegas and not Miami, right? So a lot of the super successful teams like American Top Team or AKA, or a lot of Vegas teams like Syndicate or Extreme Couture, I mean, they're fortunate enough to be also in some very great locations. Right, a lot of people want to go to Vegas and be close to UFC or UFCPI. Right, a lot of people want to go to Miami, right? Because the sun, the beach, the weather, a lot of people want to do that.
hmm
And a lot of teams also have a lot of funding behind it. Like we have millions of dollars dumped into some camps where we don't have that luxury. But we have Greg Jackson and Coach Wink, some of the greatest coaches in this history of the sport. So, and the only some of the great benefits I see here is obviously elevation. We have great elevation. There's a lot of people come here to train at elevation.
hmm
Then the cost of living here is pretty good. And from what I understand, I don't see a lot of teams that can house about 50, 60 fighters at the same time
Wow.
at their gym. We probably have the most fighters that stay at the gym at the same time, because a lot of gyms they mostly have like limited amount of space on dorms,
hmm
but we're packed with a lot of dorms and apartments. So obviously, competitively, we do have an edge in certain things.
Right.
But again, I wish we had like a big sponsor that just dumped lots of money so we can recruit more. But that's why and we're always looking for sponsors. We have sponsors that obviously do come in and help the gym out and stuff, but we're self-sufficient, which I'm proud of it. Like we stay afloat on our own basis, on our own skill, and our own hard work. it's much easier when you have millions of dollars pumping into the camp, right? So
Right.
obviously, then it's easier to recruit and pay fighters to join your camp. Whatever talent comes out of here, it's homegrown in a way. Because if you look at all the majority of highly successful athletes in the sport, or the one that came from Greg Jackson's camp, I was homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
Homegrown, where it takes years and years and years to develop. And now we're kind of going through a transition where majority of the fighters that became so super famous out of here, they either at the end of retirement already retired. So we're in the process of literally kind of putting our time into bringing up new talent, and it takes time.
Okay.
So
how many coaches work out of the gym, and do you guys limit how many students you will have, or will you take whoever wants to come?
No, there's no limit.
Okay.
I'm being a little bit more selective of who stays at the gym.
Okay.
Now, because we're so packed, so I have to actually, because I get inquiries like every day, like 10, 15 inquiries from all over the world. People ask, hey, I want to come to the gym, I want to stay at the gym.
Wow.
So, and a lot of amateurs inquire as well. And since we're so packed, I have to be a little bit selective, because originally the gym was only targeted towards pro fighters,
right?
So, and then once we started blowing up like this, and we saw how crazy popular the gym is becoming, there was a lot of media around it. There was like Ariel Helwani coming here, and many big high level productions teams for like videos and UFC and stuff. So our gym was always not being spoken about housing and stuff like that. So it got out there really quick. And like gym was just bombarded with inquiries. So that's when we started like, okay, let's start a separate amateur team, where we get to develop amateurs and bring them up into the pros, and and go from there. So that's when we started. Actually, it was like we had only like one wing of the building dedicated to the fighter dormitories, and then we just started expanding, building more and more and more. Every time we build, it gets filled. We build, it gets filled. So we're in the process of possibly like maybe building a third floor in a couple of years.
Wow. And then, so when you're working with amateur fighters, do you have like a minimum number of fights you want them to have before you let them make the jump to pro, or does it vary?
Not really. It all depends, because look at John Jones, for example. He never even had amateur fights, right?
True.
So it all depends. You got some killers. Like I have an Olympian girl coming, Mongolian. She's a legendary judo player. She's the first ever woman or Mongolian, I think, to win. Female woman to win a bronze medal in Olympics. It's just like literally like Ronda Rousey, but of Mongolia.
Okay.
And then she is like 3-time world champion in judo. She won Grand Slam like 10 times. She's like super decorated, and she's 30 years old. She's transitioning into MMA now. So like for her to get like, an amateur fight might be pretty hard. Like who'd want to,
True.
fight
Yep.
Olympian, at amateurs. But so some of the athletes like that, they go pro right away, So as long as once the coaches clear them and they say, I think based on the training and what you're doing, I think you can go pro, So
okay, cool.
It all depends.
So do you No, go ahead.
No, it all depends. Like I said, it all depends on the person, what other things they've done. If they have no experience. Right now, a lot of kids coming through, they don't have any type of background in martial arts. They're very young. They want to start out right away in MMA. Like Rory McDonald was, right? They're just like straight up. But then some people come with their background already, martial arts background.
Okay.
But I know like the way we recruit is, even for amateur program, you have to have some kind of martial arts base to start with. We don't do completely beginners.
Okay.
We start with the private sessions and stuff like that, so we can work with them one-on-ones to get them ready for that type of stuff, like to join the amateur program. But if they have some kind of other sports like football, soccer, basketball, baseball, any type of like collegiate level athletes, pro athletes and stuff like that, obviously they advance pretty much quicker. So.
Okay, cool. So now you said you have the Gracie Barra school just around the corner from you. Do you still compete in jiu-jitsu?
I'm dying to compete. I'm dealing with a really, really bad back issue.
Oh, okay.
or I was supposed to go and get they call this called ablation, where they burn your nerves. It's supposed to like help. I guess I haven't actually trained for 5 months. I'm like probably in the most miserable state of mind for the past 5 months that I've ever been.
Right.
I had like steroid injections in my back that didn't do anything because, like I said, I go through VA since I'm the veteran, so I'm scheduled for MRI in August. So it's like I still don't have a diagnosis. I've been struggling. I mean, it's a lot of wear and tear obviously on my body. I'm 42,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been trying some of the best fighters in the world and get beat up by them. So, and they don't spare you. It doesn't matter if you're 42 or not. So they'll put it on you.
Yep.
So, and I'll hold my own with every single one of them for the majority of the part. But and you always fight. It's almost like, especially in grappling and wrestling exchanges, it's always 100% contact, right? So it's not like, and you know how it is. I'm sure you heard them say, "Hey, let's go easy, let's go blah blah." The minute you clinch, it's like a world championship right there.
Right.
So yeah, my body been through a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with my lower back and how to fix it so I can get back into training, because I have a gold medal in any type of like whatever championship I entered
Mm-hmm.
on every belt level except the black belt,
Ah,
because
okay.
I got my black belt a couple years ago. It's actually due for my first degree this year. I have to at least get one competition,
Oh,
or as
yeah.
much as I can, obviously,
Right.
but to be healthy, because I can't train at that pace to get ready for a tournament. Like I'll fall apart like instantly, and then I lay in bed for weeks, like crying
Wow.
and moaning, but because it's really painful whatever you show him.
Well,
I
hopefully
can't.
get it figured out. It'd be good to be able to compete again.
I hope so. Well, I'm not even concerned about competing as much. I just want to train because that's
Right.
my mental therapy. Like I need that.
Yep.
I need that so bad, and not being able to do it is almost like, and I'm only 42. Like I feel like an invalid, like where I'm like, listen, is this it? Is it the end of my journey in training? Because I don't see my life without it.
Yeah, injuries are not fun. That's I mean
No,
I've been doing martial arts 38 years. I've had my fair share of injuries. So
you
so
know.
so what advice would you give young people, older people who are looking to get involved in MMA? And let's say you mentioned every state has an MMA school, so they're trying to decide between local MMA schools. What should they look for? What are some advice you'd give them on things to look for and maybe things to avoid in an MMA school that they want to get started in?
And there's so many things that you have to obviously learn and study and things like that. I mean, I am a big proponent, obviously a fan of, and as I see of who mostly dominates in MMA and any kind of sport in a way, right? I mean, wrestlers probably have the most highest level of athleticism ever seen, right? Like wrestling
Mm-hmm.
is probably the best base for MMA, as you can see in that type of sport, right? So if you're super young, you're coming up, like I would highly recommend to get your kids involved in wrestling, followed by ground fighting, because I think those two are the hardest to adapt to and learn and stuff like. Because striking is a little bit more natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like punching, kicking is like it's just natural. You throw a punch, right? So I think it's easier to pick up a little bit later. But to get that type of physique and athleticism required for high level competition in MMA, wrestling is the way to go, followed by jiu-jitsu and then striking. So to me, that's, if you get into the sport, I would highly recommend to start putting a lot of emphasis on wrestling first,
Okay.
because that's it's very rare when you get like George St. Pierre was one of the most rarest one, where you come from karateka background, karate, and become one of the greatest wrestlers in MMA, right?
Yep.
To an extent.
Yeah.
But if you look at the landscape of the MMA, you can see that the wrestlers dominate for the majority of the part, and then so that and if you're looking for schools and things like that, it's it's hard to say. You have to be obviously very aware of your training environment. When for young kids get into the sport, I mean, obviously, you always have to protect your training partners, right? Without training partners, you wouldn't be able to train. And then you don't want to be the guy that injures your training partners, because a lot of these guys trying to get in the sport, they're the ones that trying to make a living this way, right? And they want to be able to train for as long as they can. So you don't want to be the guy that injures people, right?
Right.
So you have to be very humble. You have to be very assertive. You have to be very careful the way you train, because it's a very physical sport. You go hard, they go hard, and it becomes a full-out fight. And then elbows get thrown and knees get thrown. You got to make sure you always wear a proper training equipment. The hygiene is very important, right? You train 2-3 times a day. You don't want to be that stinky guy or the guy that spreads kind of sicknesses and stuff. It's a very close contact, right, sport. So all things like that. You just have to be like a good person, good training partner.
Okay.
No egos, because, and we've all been guilty to it when training. You're being dominated, you lose your cool, it happens in the sport. But again, you just got to make sure that you're not always like that. So the
Right.
gym etiquette, and then respect for your coach is a loyalty to a certain extent. Like if people do a lot of great things for you, you have to acknowledge it. A lot of these kids, they don't have any kind of how to say. And I understand it's hard to be loyal. People go wherever things change. People leave gyms. They go to other gyms and whatnot. You just have to be very. And we experienced it a lot where we like sponsor a lot of fighters, right? We help a lot of fighters, right? They don't have a place to live. They don't have funds to afford. So we trade. We try to help people out. Just in return to literally get slapped in the face, by young fighters that have no kind of understanding, of how to be a good person in a way, right? They just go with the flow. So you have to acknowledge when people help you and be grateful. Even though I don't look for gratefulness in the way. Whatever we do great things for people. Out of our good heart too, because we see a lot of young kids struggling, right? So we help a lot of kids, and then they turn away or they go and leave the team or won't even say thank you for what we did for them, things like that, and those things hurt, and then the MMA is a small sport, so karma is real too in a way.
True.
So when I see when things like that happen, it gets back to you. So for young kids out there, you have to be aware, like don't burn your bridges, don't burn your bridges, because you'll never know when these people be either across from you in that same cage where you're going to feel uncomfortable with being like, oh damn man, I was a dick to them, but so just normal human relations, like learn normal human relations, because if you're trying to make a career in the sport, be good to people that are good to you.
That's great advice. So now thinking back, you've been a fan of the UFC since the beginning, and kind of watching the sport and the UFC change and grow throughout the past 25 some years. So do you miss the old school UFC, those first 5, 6, 7 UFCs when there was almost no rules and it was no weight classes? Do you miss that, or do you prefer the newer stuff?
Actually, it's great that you asked, because I always talk about it to people when we were old school brought up. I miss it a lot.
Nice.
I miss it so much, because it's like the new MMA and the way it's like every single weekend. New fights, like I don't look forward to them anymore. It's oversaturated. Even though it's great for the sport, it became a legitimate sport. Obviously, I understand, right? It's like NFL game, right? Every single weekend or whatnot, right? People watch it or don't watch it or whatever, but it's always there, right? So all these fights are coming out. Like, can we keep up with who is what, who is doing? Back in the day, you like looked forward to these fights because they were always much rare. All these personalities, the great personalities that were being born. They were like unique personalities. They were dressed unique. They acted unique. But now, since the Reebok or a uniform code came in, it's all the same. It's all the same. So it's not that much fun. And then the judging became like atrocious. Like Holm got like so badly screwed in the last fight, and it was like almost every other fight is like what the hell are these judges watching? It's like non-stop, so many judging problems, right?
Yep.
And like the whole world's watching it. They see one fighter won, and it's like a consensus. And then, but the judges completely like all over the place with their judging scores, right? So it's and of course, I'm happy that so many opportunities for fighters and so many fighters coming from all over the place, you know.
Right.
But it's like I said, it's oversaturated, and there's pluses and minuses out there, right? So there's a lot of great things. I'm happy that purses are getting bigger, fighters. It's actually becoming more of a good career choice that you can get into it. You know, it's a short career, obviously,
Definitely.
but but back in the day, it's even though it's a short career, but you build your name. You still have a lot of great things that can happen to you, you know, for your future, opening a school, coaching, teaching, become a household name. There's so many other opportunities open up, getting into the movies, things like that, right? Getting into other forms of entertainment. It's a lot of great things, but again, it's I'm very nostalgic in a way.
Yep.
So
Same.
and most of us are too, right? Most people are. So I'm sure like 10, 20 years from now, whoever is going to talk about now, I'm sure there's, you know, depends. Always be people that are, oh man, I miss the old days, even though, you know, our old days are completely different to their old days, right? In the
Very
future.
true.
So,
Yes. Yes.
but we are, you know, I always say this, we're literally in the infancy of the sport. It's like when Muhammad Ali was out there, right? Like, you know, Rocky Marciano, those days, or when the birth of the boxing and when it was so popular and so big, right? When it all started, you know, now boxing is like over 100 years old, right? In a way.
Mm-hmm.
And no, and then we've seen like a huge rise of the sport where it stagnated and kind of fell, right? Like boxing is not as big anymore, right? I mean, you can agree with that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
mean,
definitely.
it's not like Mike Tyson days where just like everyone was so captivated by this, you know. There's no, you know, well, like time stopped when Mike Tyson fought, right? Like everyone
Yep.
just like rushed to TVs and just like the whole world went just like boom, Mike Tyson's fight, right? Now, like none of that exists. Like none of it's like there's no excitement even about MMA or boxing, right?
Right.
It's nothing like this. It's so mainstream. They just oh whatever, you know. Back it was like more emotion, or more, you know. It's like more attachment to the sport, more like, you know, you watch it with your open mouth, like Mike Tyson walking out. You know, none of this like this exists no more. And then so, but we are also in the infancy of the sport. Like literally, the MMA became so popular in our lifetime, right? In
Mm-hmm.
our lifetime. Majority of kids that are grow up right now, they have no idea who is like Royce Gracie, or, you know, they say, you know what I'm saying? Like, but even though it's like only 30 years or so, right? The MMA been around like this, you've
Yep.
seen stuff. So it happened in our lifetime when like I was born, like, you know, I was already kind of like boxing was already at the highest peak, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know what it was like during Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali and George Foreman days and
Very true.
Ray Rice. And it was like the beginning of boxing when the guys fought like 15 rounds, you know, and it was like bloodbath and things like that. So we're in the infancy in the beginning of the sport, and even look at it like within 20, 30 years when the guys were literally fighting three fights a night or 5 fights a night
Yep.
tournaments, right? You don't know who's fighting. You know, guys had 200, 300 fights underground, 8-fight tournaments, 16-man tournaments, like Igor Vovchanchin, if you remember from Pride, like big fan
Mm-hmm.
of him. Like those names, you know, that if you talk to newcomers right now, it's like they don't even know who the hell these guys are, you know. But we grew up during those times when it was like just the beginning of MMA. So it was kind of, you know, you could say when when we get to 70, 80, like we were there during those times. We watched it grow from where it was to look where it's now, right? It's
Yeah.
like guys are making $5 million, $10 million a fight, big names, right? Where before it was just like, I mean, whatever your purses were, it was obviously not even close to
Yeah.
that. So
Couple
it was
thousand
cool to,
maybe.
right? So it's or a lot of those tournaments were like underground for like, I don't know, here's the trophy, bye bye.
Yep.
You know, so yeah,
Here's
interesting.
$100 for your gas money. Thanks for fighting.
Brain damage, broken jaw, broken nose, go fix yourself.
Yep. That's great. It's
Things change.
definitely been something to watch over the last 30 years. So
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It'd be cool.
so then throughout your martial arts career, is there a couple martial artists that you'd put on the top of your list, like a Mount Rushmore, just some martial artists you really look up to, whether they're people you've actually trained with and met, or just, people you've admired? Who were a couple martial artists that you'd put on the top of your list?
Well, I grew up. Obviously being a big fan of watching Fyodor Emelianenko, right? Plus, it was a
Yes,
home
definitely.
guy. I was Russian and stuff. So he would be up there definitely. I mean, no one has made that much impact as Fyodor in MMA, right? Even though never fighting in UFC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would be on there. I'd put Khabib in there.
Nice.
Khabib, because, well, a little biased. I worked with him, and he's a great human being. I really
Right.
liked him a lot and what he's done. And I know he didn't have a lot of title defenses, but he retired on top, never beaten. Dominated everybody. So I'd put him up there. I'd put Holly Holm up there. Obviously, she's from our team and stuff, and I
Yep.
know she's older now, and it's a little bit harder, obviously, to compete at that level in a way. But what she's achieved within the boxing, she was just inducted into International Boxing
Yep.
Hall of Fame 4 weeks ago. And then to win the UFC title and still competing and still going there. Holly for me is absolute legend and a champion. I mean, I had a big fallout with John Jones, obviously, at the
Mm-hmm.
camp, but can't deny his greatness, right?
Right.
So he's I'd say, Muhammad Ali of
Oh yeah,
boxing. I mean,
definitely.
you know.
Very cool.
So put aside his, all the controversies and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, some good answers though. Some really good answers.
So yeah,
Okay.
there's so many great athletes. I mean, it's that the Mount of Rushmore is interchangeable, like nonstop. So new faces come up,
Exactly.
new name up, new legends come up. The older one got forgotten, even though they were like the biggest ones. So who knows, man?
And that's one that can change. I mean, I've asked people that question a year apart and they've had completely different answers. So it's,
Yeah, it'll
it's
never be the. There's thousands of fighters and hundreds of top names.
right.
But boxing, like, who do you put on there? Who knows? So many greats.
Yep.
And
Nice.
so
Nice.
that goat, when people speak of a goat, it's also so many different things you can say.
Right. Cool. Okay. So then in all your years of training in martial arts, whether it be, Sambo, jiu-jitsu, judo, everything else, is there any philosophy that you've learned that just really, really is important to you and you keep teaching yourself to other students, and it's just, to the top of your list for philosophies that you've learned?
Well, as you saw, like when you asked me about the amateur fighters and what the advice I have, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those are my focus, even though, like, for pro and amateur athletes are just, the philosophy is you got to be a good person, right? Like, all in and out,
Yep.
and outside of it, I mean, I've met so many crazy people in the sport that do so much dumb shit. I'm sorry,
Yep.
that compromise their careers in so many ways. So many talented people that never reach their potential. I had guys that, I mean, I've seen thousands of fighters come through, right, and work through. I mean, this sport is, and this camp is something to. I mean, we're working on working on a reality show, like, people need to see like the type of characters come through this sport, and how many people I dealt with. So, and it's always again, that's exactly what I was teaching. Like, I mean, I know philosophy. We can be philosophical and talk about it for hours, right?
Right.
In a way, but it just be a good, decent person. And most people know deep down inside what's good, what's bad, right? So it's try and we all deal with a lot of different things, like, because the public, when they look at the fights, and they only see 10, 15, 25, whatever, as many rounds the fight goes, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
only way to judge and see and judge you, and you're on the microscope, right? You're on the magnifying glass nonstop as a professional fighter and or any type of competitor, right? You always people watching you and stuff, so it's easy to go sideways. That's why you see a lot of fighters fall through or don't reach their potential because their mental state, because of a lot of majority of people know how to fight because all they do is train, right? They all know. So usually it's whoever wins is more of a mental, whoever breaks through their mental barriers, the way I see it, whoever controls their own demons in a way, right? Because look at John Jones and look at Mike Tyson and look at a lot of all these horrible fighters and how much crazy stuff they've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys did a lot of demons. I mean, you getting knocked out or getting punched in the face in front of the whole world. You're so exposed to so many things, right? So I think it's the best ones are the ones that control your demons, control your emotions, are able to lock them in the closet, and to be able to perform in front of the world, while so many things are hunting you. So
Mm-hmm.
people don't see what happens with people's personal lives and how many things, the injuries that they deal with and so many other mental aspects that have to be conquered before step in the cage. So there's a lot of things that fighters deal with before they fight. So, but the people are too easy to judge them, based on whatever their performance. And imagine to try to stay on top of your game all the time, every single competition, when all these guys just compete every single weekend, up to the big shows, So, the wrestlers or strikers, a lot of the guys that get to the big shows, they have so much competition experience and so much stuff, right? Then they have to overcome, and so many nagging injuries and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's all about the inner demons and how you deal with your mental state. I
Good.
think that's it. That you don't go off the rails, because I've seen a lot of fighters fall through, and it's when you see like domestic violence, alcohol abuse, drug
Right.
usage, all that type of stuff, right? So, because let's say you don't make it, right? You're really good, but let's say you're good, doing very, very well, and you're like your expectations are so high, and you're like right there, right? I can be UFC champion, and you get knocked out so bad, right? Where like you can't comprehend it, right? And then like boom, it's the end of the career. So what's next? What's next? What happens next? Right?
Right. Right.
Imagine all. That's why I always tell the fighters, don't put all the eggs in one basket. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You always tell the guys, you are literally one punch away from never doing it ever again. So be realistic about it. You have to, you're young right now, you're reckless, you don't know what the future holds for you. No one does, right? And as they say, you're in control of your own destiny. Yes and no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't control our destinies. You can die any minute of the day from 1,000 different things. Remember the movie Thousand Ways to Die,
Yep.
right? So, and but here you are in this very super dangerous sport. So, and you've been preparing for your whole life to fight, and you love doing it, and then this happens, or you break your leg, or you break your arm, or something like this. So you have to know what you're going to do next. Like at least you have to prepare for things not going your way.
Right. No, that's great
Yeah,
advice.
so
Great advice.
that's yeah, because this is my philosophy behind it. Because it's kind of almost happened to me. I never got a chance to compete in the web because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many roadblocks. So be ready for real life, because people look up to those that made it, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make it. I want." They dream big, and it's okay to dream big. We all dream big, right? But do the dreams always come true? In my sense, and me personally, yes, my dream came true to a certain extent. I really wanted to be in this business, really, really bad. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was so wanted to succeed and do and be in the sport because I loved it so much, and it happened to me. And a lot of the guys dream to compete in the UFC, and you get there. But how many become the UFC champions, right? It's cream of the crop rise up. So if this doesn't happen to you, what is your alternative? What is your next step in life? Because you're still very young, right? You're
Yep.
still very young when you're chasing that sport. How many guys become household names without ever winning a championship?
True.
But they win, lose, win, lose, still household names, still make a decent amount of money can make a career. But again, it's always 50-50, so that's my philosophy behind how the sport operates. And this is the advice for the people I always tell, like, be very careful.
Nice. No, that's good. That's good. All right. I got a few fun questions to wrap it up. Do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Oh man, it's been a while that I read many books, man, because I'm like literally working 24/7.
Right.
Honestly, I really don't, my friend, because
Okay.
it's not the era of the books anymore,
Mm-hmm.
So it's more, just watch movies and videos, and you learn more of, visually. Than, even though I do like read the books, and I wish I had more time, but I can't answer that. I've read a bunch of martial art books, but I can't like literally.
No problem. No problem. So you grew up in the 80s and 90s. Did you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you play video games when you were younger?
Well, yeah, I still play.
Okay.
I still play. I love video games, but obviously it was always Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
I remember the Sega days, the stuff like that. I mean, I was hooked on it.
That was a fun game. Yeah, that's. I haven't played Mortal Kombat in about 20 years, but I used to love playing it. Okay. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
TV show? Oh, well, MMA show is Kingdom. Kingdom is one
great
of the
show.
best.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Oh, I love that. Loved. I binge watched the whole thing. Yep.
Did you know, with Frank Grillo, right?
Yes.
He came to the gym, actually. Greg Jackson made that movie.
No, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, look it up. Greg Jackson and Frank Grillo and Belasco, I think his last name, the guy that made that. Yeah, that's if you look at when you watch the movie, Frank Grillo in his office, and in the background of his TV, you got a YouTube video playing about our gym.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, if you look, there's majority of the fighters in the gym and in the series are our guys. Demarcus Page, Cap Swanson. There's a bunch of guys in there. I forgot the names. They're all our guys.
Okay.
And then one of the main actors, I forgot. He's the guy, the Destroyer. Yep. He was at the gym couple times too.
Okay. Such a good show. I found it by accident. I completely forgot, and I was like, "Oh, this is so good!" And I watched the whole thing in like 2 weeks. So
yeah, by far the best. There's the movies, obviously. But as a series, like a TV show, this is number one about MMA. No one ever done anything better like this.
Agreed. I'm actually trying to get Frank on my show. I haven't had a response yet, but I'd love to interview him. So he'd be a fun one. But
maybe if you try, maybe hit him up and say, hey, I'll actually, you know what? I'll try to set up Greg Jackson with you.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, after we're done and stuff, I'll work on it, and then maybe once you do that one, you'll talk to Greg Jackson about Frank Grillo and that movie. So Greg, and then you can approach Frank Grillo, kind of send a message, say, hey man, I just had Greg Jackson. He spoke about you and stuff like that. So maybe that'll be one of the good ways for you to get Frank Grillo.
Cool. I'd appreciate that. So,
all
right.
Absolutely.
Final question: favorite martial arts movie?
Bloodsport.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
The best.
Yeah.
The best.
I love it.
And another one, Kickboxer.
Yes.
Because actually a little trivia for you. Remember the Kickboxer, right? Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yep.
Thailand to fight Typo, and when his brother gets paralyzed, right?
Yep. Dennis Alexio. Yep.
Alexio. So fun fact for you, Coach Winklejohn fought Dennis Alexio.
Really?
Back in the day.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, he lost to him, but Coach Wink was still young and up and comer. And Dennis Alexio was already like undefeated world champion.
Wow.
And absolute badass. And yeah, Coach Wink fought some legendary figures back in the kickboxing Muay Thai days. He fought that Dragon Wilson. I forgot his first name.
Dom the Dragon Wilson. Yep.
Dom Dragon Wilson. Yeah, he fought some big names. Those are my best.
Did he ever fight Benny the Jet?
I'm not Daniel the Jet, but they know each other very well.
Yeah.
Coach Winklejohn is a very, very big figure of the old school kickboxing Muay Thai. He was multiple-time world champion.
Nice. Yeah, I've interviewed a few kickboxing guys. I'm actually trying to get Don Wilson. He said yes. I just got to get that scheduled. So hopefully I'll have Don the Dragon on my show. And I've interviewed like Joe Corley, who was a kickboxer back in the day, and some other guys. So Very,
I
very
can
cool.
I can hook you out with lots of interviews, even with if you wanted to some like up and coming guys or like mid level guys that is like kind of making decent name for themselves. I
Mhm.
can send some guys your way.
No, that'd be cool. I'd appreciate that. So, well, Mike, I want to thank you so much. Seriously, this has been such a fun interview. I knew very little about you at all, and after just reading your short bio on the website, but you have such a cool story. I mean, you literally talk about the American dream. Literally got your dream job, and just, I mean, you sound like you're just living the dream, and you love what you're doing, and you have the perfect job, and you're in one of the top MMA schools in history, which is awesome. So I mean, it's just been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir. Likewise, I really appreciate it, sir.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.